Hello and welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold, and this week I'm joined by special guest Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report for the full show for the third week in a row. Chris, thank you for joining me again this week.
Thanks for having me again. It's always fun.
Diving right into it for the Tigers, it was a 2-4 record this week on their 6-game road trip, plus an 0-1 record since returning home. So a 2-5 record since we recorded our last episode. The Tigers went 0-3 versus the Athletics at Sutter Health Park. That's in West Sacramento. Then the Tigers went 2-1 versus the Kansas City Royals at Kauffman Stadium. And then 0-1 versus the New York Mets on Labor Day at Comerica Park. Digging into what happened this past week, the Tigers have played too well for too long for us to get too hung up on what we saw in West Sacramento playing against the Athletics at that AAA ballpark. But it was probably the sloppiest series of the season. 2 errors in every game, plus more inexcusable mistakes. It was an 8-3 loss in Monday's series opener, then a 7-6 loss in extra innings on Tuesday, and then a 7-0 loss in Wednesday's series finale. So the Tigers were swept out of Sacramento by the Athletics. The big swing in that series really occurred on Monday when we saw Shea Langoliers hit a grand slam off Tarik Skubal, but after defensive mistakes from Gleyber Torres and Zach McKinstry set the table for the Langoliers grand slam, which is why only one of Skubal's 6 runs were earned in that start. And then Tuesday's loss in extra innings, Will Vest could not find the strike zone. He walked 3 batters in the bottom of the 10th inning, including a walk-off walk for the Athletics. And then Wednesday's game just wasn't even competitive. The Tigers were down 4-0 after 2 innings, and it ended up being a 7-0 loss to the Athletics. And then thankfully the Tigers got out of Sacramento, although they had to sit on the tarmac at the airport in Sacramento all day on Thursday's off day because the team plane had some issues. So they didn't actually arrive in Kansas City until 10 p.m. Thursday. They were supposed to be there Thursday morning, but the Tigers eventually got out of Sacramento. Chris, as you reflect back on that series against the A's, again, uncharacteristic play from the Tigers. That's not the kind of team that they are, but there were some concerning signs in that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly sloppy out there. You know, I take some solace, I guess, in the fact that they cleaned it up when they got to Kansas City. I don't think there were any errors in that series. And so you maybe attribute a little bit of it to the time change and to playing in a minor league park, which the whole situation is still kind of a disgrace, right? Like you're playing in a Pacific Coast League park with probably poor lighting and bad dirt and all that stuff. But yeah, it was really ugly. And I think AJ Hinch said as much, using some profanity, which is always fun. But yeah, I mean, they cleaned it up in Kansas City, although the game against the Mets was a little sloppy too. So I don't know, it's slightly concerning, but it's also kind of dog days, part of the year. And no harm, no foul. I think they're still first in the American League.
For sure. And definitely part of the grind. Like that is exactly what happens when you get into mid to late August. You'll see these kind of performances. My big thing, and we mentioned it before, was like, let's just not take this into October, right? Like, let's make sure that we finish this stretch run strong, get into October on the right note. But to your point, yeah, the Tigers arrived in Kansas City and the performance got a lot better from there. They won 5-3 on Friday. They lost 3-1 on Saturday, and they won 5-0 on Sunday. It was a great bounce back series against a team that's trying to chase them down in the American League Central. You saw what they did. Friday's 5-3 win. They went down 3-0 in the first inning. Chris Paddock continues to be a liability, but the bullpen stepped up. And then the at-bats against Royals starter Seth Lugo were just outstanding. Like before you knew it, the Tigers chased Lugo with 1 out in the 4th inning, and they had a 4-3 lead after the 4th inning. So it was a really good sign for them coming out of that A's series. And then in Saturday's 3-1 loss, Bobby Witt Jr. did Bobby Witt Jr. things, hitting a 2-run home run off left-handed reliever Tyler Holton in the 8th inning. Sure enough, it was a fastball. Opponents continued to mash Holton's fastball, which is something to watch moving forward. The stuff seems to be the same, but maybe he's just not being as deceptive as he had been in the past 2 seasons. And then in Sunday's 5-0 win, Tarik Skubal, he throws 7 scoreless innings. Jake Rogers, he does all the work behind the plate, also delivers 2 RBIs at the plate. And just like that, the Tigers won the series in Kansas City, and at the same time became the second MLB team to 80 wins this season. There was the quick turnaround with a day game on Labor Day against the New York Mets. The Tigers lost 10-8. There's a lot of scoring, a lot of hits. I go back to 2 moments in that game. Juan Soto versus Charlie Morton in the 4th inning, and Juan Soto versus Drew Sommers in the 6th inning. In the 4th, Charlie Morton had the bases loaded, but he recorded back-to-back strikeouts, and then he got to 2 strikes on Soto. So he was 1 strike away from stranding the bases loaded with 3 outs in a row. But then Juan Soto blasts a hanging curveball for a grand slam, puts the Mets ahead 6-3. And then in the 6th inning, Drew Summers, who, as a reminder, he is in the bullpen as one of 2 left-handed relievers with the responsibility of getting left-handed hitters out. He throws an inside sinker that Soto pulls down the first base line and into right field for a 2-run triple. That puts the Mets ahead 8-6. Those matchups, they just weren't a fair fight. I mean, it's Juan Soto versus Charlie Morton, and it's Juan Soto versus Drew Summers. Like, those are the kind of great hitters that the Tigers will be facing in October. So buckle up, everyone. Like, if the Tigers continue to move forward the way that they are, you're going to see those kind of matchups where a guy like Drew Summers may have to face somebody like a Juan Soto in the postseason. Same goes for Charlie Morton, where it just doesn't seem like a fair fight. But that was the week for the Tigers. Almost entirely bad in Sacramento, pretty good in Kansas City, and then a very ugly return to Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked on our last show the week before that, where when everything was going wrong back around the All-Star break, it felt awful, partially because the Tigers weren't scoring. I think that always feels worse than when you're scoring a bunch and then you just get outscored. And I don't know why. It's just kind of mentally, it feels like they're trying more when they're actually scoring, which of course they're always trying. But when they don't score, it feels like, come on, guys, try harder. And yeah, it's to the point about Juan Soto, and Bobby Witt for that matter, those 2, the big hit in Kansas City, those are 2 of the best players in baseball. They're going to get you. The key is to have them get you with nobody else on base. And that was Charlie Morton's issue on Monday. He just could not find the strike zone. And what's disappointing about that is a veteran like that, the stuff is still pretty good, but you would hope that he could get himself on track. And he just could not find the strike zone until it was too late. And then he almost wiggled out of it. But he did the exact same thing in the first inning against the A's, where I think he put 2 on, got 2 outs, and then gave up a 3-run homer to Jacob Wilson. And you just can't have that. You could give up homers occasionally. I mean, Justin Verlander in his heyday in the Astros basically did nothing but get strikeouts, pop-ups, and the occasional solo homer. And you want to Cy Young. You could do that. You just can't put 2-3 guys on base before you give up that home run. And that was huge. And then, the Drew Summers thing, I don't know if there's a lefty on the planet who can really, any pitcher on the planet really, who's going to consistently get Juan Soto out. But yeah, he did get the job done.
All right. So entering Tuesday, September 2nd, the Tigers have an 80-59 record, 9 games ahead of the Royals for first place in the American League Central. Tigers have a half-game lead on the Toronto Blue Jays for first place in the American League. As for MLB teams as a whole, all 30 of them, the Tigers trail only the National League's Milwaukee Brewers and Philadelphia Phillies in the standings. Looking ahead to the postseason, the Tigers remain lined up for a bye to the best of 5 ALDS, where they're currently on track to face the winner of the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays are positioned for the other bye to the ALDS, where they'll await the winner of the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners. That's the playoff picture right now. The Tigers have 23 games remaining in the 2025 season. Coming up this week, it is 2 more games against the Mets and 3 games against the White Sox before a 6-game road trip against the New York Yankees and Miami Marlins next week. The Tigers need to win 16 of their final 23 games to reach 96 wins, which is something that we talked about on last week's episode. You got games against the Mets, White Sox, Yankees, Marlins, Guardians, Braves, Guardians again, and Red Sox to wrap up the season. Winning 16 of 23 games is a .695 winning percentage. So far, the Tigers have won 80 of 139 games for a .575 winning percentage. So they will have to pick it up to finish with 96 wins. You brought it up on last week's episode, Chris. Do you see that happening? 96 wins for the Tigers. Do you think that they can win 16 of their final 23 games?
I mean, they could. I think, we were talking about that. We, mentioned that there's going to be more road games than home games, and that's always going to be tough. And when you start, was it 2-5 in the first 7? It's going to be tough to pull that around. But again, all it takes is a 4 or 5 game winning streak and you're back on track. So I think it's possible. I'm not expecting it. I still think that they're probably going to end up around 90, 91 wins, which is plenty. When before the season, I thought maybe they'd get 84, but yeah, 96 seems like a stretch now.
Let's get into the big 2. Question 1 of the big 2. Rosters expanded on September 1st from 26 players to 28 players. The Tigers added 1 pitcher in Chase Lee, which is technically Sawyer Gibson-Long, which could become Bailey Horn, and 1 position player in Justin Henry Malloy. What do we think about these additions? Do the September call-ups actually matter because of how often the Tigers shuffle their roster? For example, calling up Chase Lee for Monday's game and then activating Sawyer Gipson-Long for Tuesday's game. And if the Tigers want, they could call up left-handed reliever Bailey Horn to take Gipson-Long's spot for Wednesday's game. If they want another lefty in their bullpen, not only for Wednesday's game, but also for the upcoming series against the Chicago White Sox over the weekend. What do we think about the ads? Chase Lee / Sawyer Gipson-Long on the pitching side, and then Justin Henry Malloy on the position player side. And yeah, does it even matter?
I mean, I think it doesn't, honestly, not to throw the whole question out right away, but to your point, yeah, I mean, they're just going to keep shuffling guys. Now, I will say, Malloy, there weren't a ton of options for bringing up another hitter, and you have to have 14 hitters or 14 pitchers. And Malloy, we already saw what Malloy might bring to the team. Yesterday, AJ Hinch had Kerry Carpenter come in and pinch hit in a big spot for Javi Baez, I believe. And then in the next plate appearance, they brought in a lefty to face Carpenter, and Hinch countered with Malloy. Malloy, I think, popped out, but that's what you're going to see. He's going to be used in that way, I think, for the most part. And then I think we mentioned it the other day, but he may spell Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson a little bit. Those guys play a lot, maybe get them off their feet for a day or two, one game DH, one day, not playing. And Malloy can fill in left field and in first base, theoretically. On the pitching side, no, I think that's to your point, that they're just going to keep mixing and matching. I was mildly surprised that they brought up Chase Lee. I was kind of looking at his stats down in AAA. And, for the first, 30 games, 25 games of Chase Lee's season, he was outstanding. He looked like he was one of the trusted members of the bullpen. And then I think it was 5-6 innings. He gave up 5 home runs and 10 earned runs, and he was back to Toledo. And that's the life of a reliever, I think. But I was looking, and down in Toledo, they changed his usage slightly. I'm not necessarily sure it matters or it will reflect what we're going to see in the big leagues again if he does pitch, but they upped his sweeper usage by like 12%. And you can dig into the data even more, and it's slightly less sweepy. It was averaging 19 inches of sweep or horizontal movement in the big leagues, and it was 16.7 in Toledo. And it's got more drop now. It was 5 inches before, now it's 6.3. Not a ton of changes, but they seems like they want to tighten it up a little bit, maybe less sweepy out of his hand, so hitters don't pick it up as early. And to that point, like the usage point, I don't know if necessarily that's going to reflect what he's going to do now, but they may have just been having him throw a ton of sweepers to try to get that new shape down a little bit, which might result in, you look at the numbers and it's like a 6.7 ERA in Toledo, but it's something to look forward if we see him pitch to see, is the sweeper looking any different now? And is it more effective? But again, yeah, like they're going to get Sawyer Gipson-Long is going to start on Tuesday, or Wednesday Tuesday. And then we'll see. They're going to keep moving guys around. I think, like you're right, we'll probably see Drew Summers go down in favor of Sawyer Gipson-Long. And then, maybe Chase Lee pitches a little bit, and then it's Bailey Horn's turn. So that they brought up Lee and Gipson-Long, I don't think matters all that much.
Yeah, I think, there's even a chance that Chase Lee could be the one who gets sent down. Like maybe he was only just called up because the Tigers knew that they did not need Sawyer Gipson-Long until Tuesday's game. And then why not have that reliever in the bullpen? You need 14 pitchers, and why not have that extra reliever in case of a blowout one way or the other? And not to burst anyone's bubble, but like Kevin McGonigal did not walk through the doors at Comerica Park. Like, Tigers do not view these as the traditional September call-ups where you call up a young player, give them the month to learn and develop in the big leagues, or you call them up to compete and contend and try to make that postseason push. In this case, the Tigers view the September call-ups as extra roster spots to continue cycling through players to gain matchup advantages on a series-by-series basis, which we've talked about extensively on the show. So instead of 13 position players, you get 14 position players. Instead of 13 pitchers, you get 14 pitchers. As a whole, instead of a 26-man roster, you get a 28-man roster. Like that is how the Tigers view the September call-ups. They called up Chase Lee as their extra pitcher and Jaylon as their extra position player. Those guys could both be gone in a few days. Like Chase Lee, I think he's the one that's going to get optioned for Sawyer Gipson-Long, who's going to start Tuesday against the Mets. And if that happens, then Chase Lee didn't even get to pitch during his September call-up because he was only here as a fresh arm in case of a blowout one way or the other. And then after Sawyer Gipson-Long starts, the Tigers have a decision to make. Like Bailey Horn, who was optioned August 18th, has completed his 15-day option cycle. Like he has just completed it as of Tuesday, meaning he is eligible to be recalled from AAA Toledo on Tuesday. But since Gipson-Long is starting Tuesday, do we see Bailey Horn on Wednesday? Like the Tigers were planning to call up. This is really important. The Tigers were planning to call up Brant Herter as their 14th pitcher before he suffered a lower back injury in AAA Toledo. That tells you the Tigers want 3 left-handed relievers in their bullpen. It was supposed to be Tyler Holton, Brant Herter, and Drew Summers. But since Herter is injured, could the Tigers go Gipson-Long out, Bailey Horn in for Wednesday's game, giving them 3 left-handed relievers in Tyler Holton, Drew Summers, and Bailey Horn? I could see that happening, especially because the Mets have a lot of lefties. as do the White Sox and the Yankees. And even the Marlins have some lefties. So if that happens, we're talking about 3 different pitchers in 3 different days taking up that 14th spot in the pitching staff, and then the option cycles all start over again. So I ask again, do the September call-ups actually matter? Yes, in the sense that you have 2 extra roster spots, but no in the sense that a young player coming up and getting an extended look, like that's not happening here. Here's what Tigers manager AJ Hinch said on September 1st after announcing Justin Henry Malloy and Chase Lee as the call-ups. Quote, "A lot of moving parts. September represents an opportunity to continue how we've used our roster. We're going to go series by series and sometimes game by game to give us the best chance to win," end quote. That's exactly what the Tigers are doing by shuffling their pitchers, and it's what they've been doing since early August, as we've talked about. As for the position player side, the Tigers called up Justin Henry Malloy as the 14th position player, giving them 3 right-handed hitters on the bench who slay left-handed pitching. It's Justin Henry Malloy, Jahmai Jones, and Andy Ibanez. Those are the 3 righties on the bench with track records of hitting lefties. And it makes a ton of sense for the series against the Mets. The Mets have a lot of lefties in the bullpen, and look no further than Monday's game for an example of how having that extra righty on the bench can really help out the Tigers. You talked about it extensively. 5th inning, Kerry Carpenter off the bench to pinch hit for Javier Baez. That's advantage Tigers. In the 7th inning, the Mets target Carpenter by bringing in a left-handed reliever to face him. But the Tigers were able to counter that move by bringing Malloy off the bench to pinch hit, which is advantage Tigers. So in that situation, if Malloy weren't on the roster, the Tigers wouldn't have gotten the matchup advantage there in the 7th inning. It's a small way in which having that extra right-handed bat on the bench pays off for the Tigers. Now, the thing is, the Tigers are going to have, when they face a right-handed starter, which again, they face Sean Manaea, a left-handed starter, on Monday. When they face a right-handed starter, you can only assume the Tigers are going to have Malloy, Jones, Ibanez, Baez, either Dingler or Rogers on the bench. So that is a lot of right-handed hitters on the bench, which isn't the most beneficial because of the chess match I just referenced. It only works if the Tigers had a left-handed hitter, Kerry Carpenter, and a right-handed hitter, Justin Henry Malloy, on the bench at the same time to start the game. Like that was Kerry Carpenter pinch hitting for Javi Baez, and then Jahan pinch hitting for Kerry Carpenter. That's what happened in Monday's game. So that's why I'll be curious to see what happens in the coming days. Parker Meadows is going to be coming back from the injured list. He's returning from a right quad strain. Could happen as soon as Friday. Tigers have a decision to make. Do you option Justin Henry Malloy or do you option Trey Sweeney? It's hard to make the case for Trey Sweeney because he can't hit it all and his defense is below average. But it's also hard to make the case for both Justin Henry Malloy and Jahmai Jones to be on the roster at the same time because they're pretty much the same player. They are right-handed hitters who crush lefties and can't play defense. I think Jahan does a better job of defending himself against the right-handed pitchers. I do think Jahan has better at-bat quality than Jahmai Jones. But would the Tigers actually DFA Jahmai Jones? Because remember, Jahmai Jones doesn't have any minor league options remaining. He has to be designated for assignment and run through waivers if the Tigers want to remove him from their roster of 14 position players in the big leagues. So would the Tigers risk losing Jahmai Jones just to keep Jahan in the big leagues? Or would the Tigers option Jahan and keep Jahmai Jones? Or do the Tigers throw all that out the window and just option Trey Sweeney when Parker Meadows returns, keeping both Jahan and Jahmai Jones on their roster, even though they're practically the same player? I think we have an idea of kind of what's happening on the pitching side, but I have no idea what the Tigers are going to do on the position player side when Parker Meadows returns. And he could be coming back as soon as Friday.
As Hinch said, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's tough to picture them just cutting Jones, given how well he's performed this year in the big leagues. It is a part-time role, but we saw yesterday, he had a big impact on that game. And, it could be Malloy going down. I tend to think it's probably Sweeney, as you said, but I don't think they'd have any problem sending Malloy back and maybe calling him back up down the road if they're facing a bunch of lefties. So at least for the next month, it's going to be a whole lot of player movement for sure.
Don't you just wish the Tigers had a set it and forget it type of lineup?
It would be nice, but it's increasingly hard to find those players who are good against lefties and righties. That's one of the benefits of having switch hitters. And one of the big, Witzel Perez's improvements against left-handed pitching this year have been remarkable. And that's been a huge part of his success. But even Riley Green, he never gets pinch hit for. He still struggles against lefties, but it's, he's not a complete nothing there, but he's probably the team's best hitter, and it's still a pretty decided platoon advantage there. So it's tough to find those players who can hit everybody.
Yeah, well, you look at the 2019 Astros, AJ Hinch's last team in Houston, and you have Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Michael Brantley, Yordan Alvarez, George Springer, even a young Kyle Tucker. Hopefully, one day the Tigers can get there where AJ Hinch can just focus on managing the bullpen and can have a set it and forget it type of lineup. Question 2 of the big 2. Is there a reason to be concerned about the Tigers' starting rotation besides Tarik Skubal? And who is your game 2 starter for the Tigers in the postseason?
I absolutely think there's reason to be concerned. It's hard to trust any of these guys after Skubal. We've seen certainly excellent performances from Flaherty. Casey Mize was great in the first half of the year. Charlie Morton can show you some things, but he's also been hit and miss. It's really tough for me to even imagine, any of these other starters going more than 4 or 5 innings in the playoffs. And I still think you probably go Flaherty as your number 2 starter, but it may be matchup dependent. I'm questioning whether we may see kind of pitching chaos 2.0, where you're basically just trying to get 9 outs from a bunch of different guys. And the Tigers do have, with Gibson Long and potentially Kiter Montero and Troy Melton and all these other starters who are currently in the rotation, they do have a small army of guys who might be able to give you 3 innings. And that might just be the way to go forward in the playoffs because, Skubal's your horse. You're going to ride him as long as you can. But everybody else, I think you need to pull out basically the first sign of trouble.
It's definitely a concern. And just to look at what the Tigers have right now, I mean, it's 5 starters: Tarik Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Casey Mize, Charlie Morton, Chris Paddock. In 2025, the Tigers rotation ranks 8th in MLB with a 3.81 ERA. Since the beginning of August, the Tigers rotation ranks 19th with a 4.83 ERA. And if the Tigers did not have the best pitcher in the world in Tarik Skubal, I can only imagine how bad those rankings would be. With Tarik Skubal, since the beginning of August, 19th in baseball in ERA from the rotation. Without Tarik Skubal, we could be talking like bottom 5 rotation in baseball. Like that's just how good Tarik Skubal has been for this team and how bad everyone else has been. You look at Skubal and it's a 2.18 ERA in 27 starts. Jack Flaherty, that's where it gets bad, by the way. Jack Flaherty, 4.74 ERA in 27 starts with a 6.08 ERA in his last 14 starts. Casey Mize, a 3.95 ERA in 23 starts with a 7.20 ERA in his last 8 starts. Charlie Morton, he has a 5.51 ERA in 29 games with a 5.81 ERA in 6 starts since the Tigers acquired him from the Baltimore Orioles at the trade deadline. Chris Paddock has a 5.04 ERA in 27 starts with a 5.40 ERA in 6 starts since the Tigers acquired him from the Minnesota Twins at the trade deadline. Enrique Jimenez, the 19-year-old switch-hitting catcher the Tigers gave up to get Paddock, by the way, has been absolutely raking in the Twins organization. So who was the game 2 starter? Yeah, probably Jack Flaherty. But how can you trust a guy in Jack Flaherty who has a 4.25 ERA over the last 93 games of his career, dating back to 2022? That's who Jack Flaherty is. And then who starts game 3 for the Tigers? Is it Casey Mize, who has a 4.24 ERA in his 84-game MLB career? Like, you got Tarik Skubal, and then you've got 4.25 ERA Jack Flaherty, and then 4.24 ERA Casey Mize. And you think that's going to shut down the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox in a best-of-5 ALDS? And I get it. You're right. The Tigers can play the quick hook with their non-Skubal starters and open the door to the bullpen early, but that only works if the bullpen is good. Like, the Tigers can't just rely on Troy Melton for the bulk of their innings in those situations, because he can't pitch every single game. And if you try to, you're going to run him into the ground. Another reminder, Troy Melton is not perfect. Like, as great as he's been, he has a 2.25 ERA compared to a 3.66 FIP, which tells you that maybe he's more of a 3 ERA pitcher than a 2 ERA pitcher. We'll see how things unfold over the final month. But to my initial point, it can't just be Troy Melton bridging that gap to Will Vest and Kyle Finnegan to save the bad starting rotation. Those are 3 relievers. And if the Tigers can't count on more than 3 relievers, then their bullpen is not going to save the rotation in October. And playing the matchup game with the bullpen, it's smart, and it's going to continue to be necessary as long as this rotation continues to struggle outside of Skubal. But relying heavily on the bullpen, it only works if you have quality relievers. So if you're a Tigers fan and you're worried about this rotation, you better pray Tommy Kahnle and Rafael Montero become shutdown relievers. You better pray Tyler Holton becomes the Tyler Holton of the past 2 seasons. You better pray Brant Herter gets healthy from that lower back injury and finds his command again. For me, that seems like a lot of prayers that need to be answered. Like, right now, the Tigers have Tarik Skubal, Troy Melton, Will Vest, and Kyle Finnegan. 4 of 14 pitchers that you can actually count on, with Tyler Holton, Tommy Kahnle, and maybe even Rafael Montero still needing to prove themselves, but could get on track soon. Last year, the Tigers could trust everyone in their bullpen, including the bulk relievers as part of pitching chaos. It's just not the same this year. And that Reese Olson season-ending injury, it just stings more and more every day.
Yeah, and Chris Paddock, does seem like a panic move when you look back at it. I will say a couple points here. Like, if we just look at the last month, Jack Flaherty's FIP is actually better than Tarik Skubal's. It's the small sample size. It doesn't
That's encouraging.
Yeah, it's 3.2 compared to 3.4, but still 3.2 is solid. But that's what happens when you get a bunch of strikeouts, and you got to limit the home runs in the 6-run innings. But I was looking back because I was trying to think what else they could have done at the trade deadline, and I looked, and there were like 15 starting pitchers who were traded at the deadline or the week before, and it's rough. The number one by WAR who got traded was Zach Littell at 0.5. Charlie Morton's number 2 at 0.3 WAR since the trade deadline. Chris Paddock is tied for the worst at negative 0.2, but it's negative 0.2. We're talking basically negligible both ways with Morton and Paddock. And like the two big names who are out there, sort of, Dylan Cease, he did not get traded. He's been solid since the trade deadline. It's a 0.5 WAR, but it's also a 4.8 ERA. And Mackenzie Gore was the guy that was going to cost you a Max Clark or a Briseño or something like that. He's a 0.2 WAR since the trade deadline, and now he's hurt with shoulder trouble. So it wasn't a starting pitcher market, I guess. And unfortunately, it may hurt the Tigers in the playoffs, but I don't know if there was a whole lot else they could have done.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're joined by Jaylon Thompson, the Kansas City Royals beat writer from the Kansas City Star. Everyone, I'd like to welcome Jaylon Thompson, the Kansas City Royals beat writer for the Kansas City Star, to the Days of Roar podcast. He's been here before, and we're thankful to have him back on the show. Jaylon, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Evan, glad to be here. Glad to see you in Kansas City. Let's get this thing going.
All right, so let's start with something simple. What has it been like covering the Royals throughout the 2025 season?
Evan, truthfully, the Royals have been up and down this season. You look at where they were last year, they made the postseason, made it to the ALDS, got bounced by the New York Yankees in 4 games. So we came into this year thinking the Royals are going to be a team that's going to take the next leap forward. And that kind of hasn't happened. You've seen a couple of injuries, one particularly to Cole Ragans that has kind of put a damper on the season. Ragans hasn't pitched in a couple of weeks now. I mean, it's really going on months. So they're trying to get him back by September. And if he can come back, that will put the Royals in a position where they can maybe make a chase for that third and final wild card spot. But it's like if the offense is working, the pitching staff isn't working. If the pitching staff is working, the offense isn't working. They haven't had just both of them clicking at the same time. One thing that has been consistent is the bullpen. The bullpen has been pretty much consistent all year. They just have to get the other two functioning things right, and maybe they can sneak back in. But certainly not where a lot of people thought the Royals would be at the beginning of the season. And now they're trying to just finish it out, and hopefully they can sneak in.
I want to go back to what you just mentioned. You said the Royals made the postseason last year. There were a lot of anticipation for them coming into this year. What were the expectations like coming into the 2025 season, both internally, with the team itself, and then with the fan base as well? And have the Royals even come close to meeting those expectations, or has it been a little bit of both?
The Royals wanted to win the AL Central. That was their goal. That was where they wanted to be. They said that all off season. They said it in the spring training. They knew that step one was to win the AL Central. And then you win the AL Central, you bring baseball back to Kansas City, back to the K, which if you haven't been there, the K is one of the best venues in all of baseball. And when it's lively, when it's packed to the brim and the fountains and everything, and they wanted to have that. They only got 2 games of that last year, so they wanted more, right? But the way the season has played out, they were really lucky that they didn't have a lot of pitching injuries in 2024. This year, they've had those pitching injuries, and that's kind of hurt them. Also, earlier this season, they struggled with runners in scoring position. And really, since the All-Star break, have they really shown the offense of what it can be. And when you get behind early and you can't catch a team like you're very familiar with, the Detroit Tigers in the Central, it's just a matter of, okay, what's the next goal for them? And that has been the AL wildcard. And if you think about it, if you asked me a month ago, I would have said there's no way the Royals are going to even be in this wild card race. They're like 5-6 games out at a time. Right now, they're only 3 out from the Seattle Mariners, but they still have to now jump over to Texas Rangers, Cleveland Guardians still in the mix. So it's going to come down to, can they have a strong September to make the playoffs?
To build on that, the wild card race is heating up for the Royals. We get into the final month of the regular season. You mentioned it. Royals are 3 games back of the Seattle Mariners coming out of Sunday's series finale against the Tigers. Do you think the Royals can get there? Can they get that third and final wildcard spot?
I think they can. I think that it's going to come down to just winning the games against the teams that are in front of them. Look at their September schedule. They have the Seattle Mariners that's going to come to Kansas City September 16th through the 18th. That's a huge 3-game series there because the Royals have to figure out if they can win 2 of those games just to get the tiebreaker and also catch the Mariners. They also have to keep an eye out now on the Texas Rangers, who's a half game in front of them. And if the Royals have any way of trying to get to the playoffs, they can't have Texas finish in front because, as you know, they will go ahead on above them. So it's really just come down to, can you win that series against the Mariners in September? And can you beat the Cleveland Guardians, who's behind the Royals? They have 4 games coming up in Cleveland in the next week or so. So those are the 2 series that I'm looking at. If the Royals can win those 2 series, I think they have a chance to get into the playoffs, but it's going to require a lot from the offense and the pitching staff. Seth Lugo to get back to his form that he was last year when he finished second up in the AL Cy Young Award is going to come down to Cole Reagans getting back healthy. And it might just, as we'll talk about later, come down to 2 rookies that might have to give them some infusion of power that they much need right now.
All right, enough postseason speculation for now. Let's get into what you've seen from this Royals team as of late. The Tigers and Royals, they just matched up 6 times in the last 10 days. The Tigers won 4 of those 6 games, but this Royals team has been playing better as of late. What has been fueling their recent success?
I'll give it to you straight, Evan. What's been fueling the Royals right now has been Vinny Pasquantino. He's finally stepped up and been the guy that the Royals always knew that he could be. You look at what he's done this season. He had a disappointing April where he hit 177, but then he's turned on since that point. He's been the constant force in that 3rd spot in the lineup, right behind Bobby Witt Jr., right in front of Michael Garcia. And when you can put Vinny Pasquantino in between 2 all-stars like that, you are going to be productive. Really, you look at this lineup, we mentioned Vinny, but also Michael Garcia has just been clutch. You've seen him out there at the K. It was hard to get him out. He had 2 doubles against Tarik Skubal today, which is really difficult to do when the rest of the Royals only had 4 hits total against him. So he was the one that was doing what the offense needed to stay in that game. But I think that really for the offense, the Royals offense to be efficient and be successful, a lot of it comes down to the new acquisitions they got at the trade deadline, which was Adam Frazier, Mike Yastrzemski, Randall Grichuk, professional at bats. That's what everyone in the Royals organization has called all 3 of those guys. They are professional hitters. They know how to work counts, and that has been the reason why the Royals have scored more runs this year. So it starts with Vinny, goes to Michael, and then goes to those veteran bats. That is why the Royals are thriving offensively since the All-Star break.
Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Michael Garcia, Salvador Perez, like those guys are the heartbeat of the Royals offense. Is Michael Garcia the biggest surprise of that group for you? Because he hit 231 with 7 home runs in 157 games last season. This season, he is hitting 298 with 15 home runs in 135 games. No longer is he just a stolen base threat. He is a threat with the bat in his hands.
Absolutely, Evan. You mentioned it right there. Michael Garcia is a guy that when he started last season, he started off with a bang. He was hitting home runs. I think he had 3 home runs in his first couple of games. And that kind of put him in the mindset of wanting to be a home run hitter. But that wasn't his game. So he went through all of last season struggling just to hit the ball to all fields. He was trying to pull everything, trying to hit everything over the fence. So what he did was this off season, he went back to using the toe tap, and the toe tap allowed him to stay balanced throughout the strike zone and be able to hit different pitches and adjust whenever the fastball wasn't there. And that's been the key for Michael as far as him playing and being successful. There were times last season where he looked like he wasn't having fun. If he looked like it could get to him mentally and you could see it all over him as he went and struggled at the plate, he would carry it to the field. He has not done that this year. He's having a lot of fun. He's an all-star for the first time. He's hitting behind Bobby Witt Jr., who is one of the best players in the league. You can't stress that enough, just what that does for the confidence of a player that is hitting behind someone like Bobby Witt Jr. Going to have your opportunities. It's funny. You can see them on the field. It's like your turn, my turn, pretty much when there's a pop-up or a ground ball. They're just 2 great defensive, athletic players that are also producing for the Royals. Michael Garcia, I think if the MLB had a most improved award or something like that, he would definitely probably win that because he has really just turned his whole career around. He's one of the best players in the American League. Look at his numbers, batting average and WAR, and just on base percentage. He is someone that if the Royals are going to make the deep run in the postseason, he is going to be carrying it.
I saw the Royals are reinstating Jack Caglianone from the injured list, so he will be back for Tuesday's game. I was surprised to see him play 16 games on his rehab assignment for just a hamstring strain. What's been the story of his season? Obviously, there were a lot of expectations on him being the number 6 overall pick in the 2024 draft.
So Jack Caglianone, he has mastered AAA. He pretty much has mastered all of the minor leagues, right? So it's not really a challenge for him to go down there and hit home runs and be productive and things of that nature. But as we both know, Evan, there's a huge gap between AAA and the major leagues. And Caglianone hasn't really made that jump yet, made that leap where he can hit major league pitching. There have been flashes of him hitting home runs. Like his first time he hit his first home run, he hit 2 in that game against the Texas Rangers, right? So the power is there. The power is going to come. The Royals just need him to be more confident. They need him to get his ability to hit and see pitches and not worry about, striking out or letting the game, let the game come to him. I think that's the reason why he stayed now after the rehab assignment for so long, because the team around him has changed. And to be honest with you, when they called up Caglianone in early June, they needed just offensive production. Now, like I said, they have those veteran hitters that are going to be here. Now he can come back in and he can really just find his own way without having that pressure of just having to deliver in the lineup every day. And I think that might help him. So there's a reason why they wait to September 1st to call him up. Rosters expand. It's easier just to slide him back in. And then it's kind of looking like a waiver wire free agent addition, whatever you want to call it, because now he's going to be back to help that team. And if he can get that power going in the major leagues at the end of the season, that bodes well for the Royals, not only for the rest of this year, but for next year as well.
He's a special talent, no doubt. Not only did the Tigers just miss Jack Caglianone, they also just missed 22-year-old left-handed hitting catcher Carter Jensen, whom the Royals are promoting as part of September call-ups. He is from Kansas City. He is the number 2 prospect in the Royals farm system. Is this a guy the Tigers are going to have to worry about for years to come?
I think so. He's a guy that has that left-handed hitting swing. He has just went nuclear since he's got the AAA. Just the ability of his to not only play a good solid behind the plate as a catcher, but also to produce at several different levels. He's someone that the Royals pretty much have had their eye on for such a long time. That's why they drafted him in the 3rd round of 2021 MLB draft. And when they had guys that would throw lives and things of that nature last season after the AAA campaign that ended right before the playoffs, he was up there hitting against some of the guys that was trying to work their way back. So they love his production. 20 home runs, 76 RBIs, 290 average in the minor leagues this season. And he has a OPS over 1,000 with the AAA affiliate, the Omaha Storm Chasers. He is someone that I think is going to be up and is going to stay up. The Royals probably were going to promote him in 2026. He was going to have a spot on the roster, and he just came a little bit early. So I don't see him going down. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to back up Sewald and probably be the guy that is going to transition and taking that mantle from Salvi in the upcoming years. There's a reason why they traded Freddie Fermin to the San Diego Padres. They knew what they had in Carter Jensen. And if you look at that Freddie Fermin trade, they got 2 controllable arms that have been really great in their first adventure with the Royals, which is Ryan Berger and Steven Kolek. Both have been great, have made great starts with the team. So it looks like this could be a win-win for the Royals. You get a chance to see Carter Jensen up for September, and it doesn't really count him his rookie status for 2026. So he gets a little seasoning now. And then in 2026, he goes and he's fully unleashed.
I want to dig a little deeper into what the Royals have done on the field, especially in the 2024 and 2025 seasons. In the past 2 years, the Royals rank 2nd in MLB with a 3.71 ERA from their pitching staff. The rotation ranks number 1 with a 3.60 ERA. The bullpen ranks number 13 with a 3.88 ERA. So the Royals have had one of MLB's best pitching staffs across the 2024 and 2025 seasons. How did this happen?
So you have to look at 2 names. Really, it's the whole group, but if you look at Brian Sweeney and Zach Bowe, who are the Royals pitching coaches at the MLB level, they have their arms and hands in anything else you can say even their tentacles if you just want to say that around everything that the Royals are going to be looking for with their pitchers. They go into each guy, they look at them holistically, they figure out what that pitcher does well, and they try to improve on that and also gradually add in new things at different points to help them be successful. Prime example of this, I mentioned it early, but Ryan Berger, Bailey Falter, both of those guys came in from other organizations at the trade deadline. The Royals got them in, and they got to work seeing what they can do. First start, they allowed them to go out there and just pitch and see what they are more comfortable using during start. Then they got into the lab. And when they get into the lab, that's when they're able to really dissect and figure out what they do well. One thing that I really liked was with Ryan Berger, he has a kick change that he brought over from the San Diego Padres. He wanted to continue throwing it with the Royals. So the Royals said, all right, you got the kick change. Let's get you to be able to throw that more effectively. So the Brian Sweeney and Zach Bowe both worked with Ryan Berger to really help that pitch come along. With Bailey Falter, he's a guy that has a lot of extension on when he delivers through his pitching mechanics. So the idea with him was to try to get some of that extension down on a couple of his pitches so that he's able to be more effective in navigating it against left-handed and right-handed hitters at the plate. So just as an insight of what the Royals really like to do when they have a guy that has come into their organization, they like to see what they do well and then build on that. And they like to expound on that. Brady Singer last year was with the Royals. He learned to throw a sweeper. He was a 2-pitch pitcher right before Brian Sweeney and Zach Bowe got there. But in those 2 years that he was with them, he added multiple pitches to his repertoire. Now he's a 4 and 5 pitch pitcher, and that has helped him. Now he's with the Cincinnati Reds.
Like I said, the Kansas City Royals across the 2024 and 2025 seasons, rotation ranks number 1 in MLB, bullpen ranks number 13 in MLB, pitching staff as a whole ranks number 2 in MLB. Looking at the individuals, Seth Lugo locked him up to a contract extension. Michael Wacha locked him up to a contract extension. Noah Cameron, that's a good young arm. Cole Reagans, he has been injured, but that is an elite young arm with Cy Young caliber upside. Chris Bubic, I know he's out for the season with an injury, but he was an all-star this year and he's going to be back next year. Do you feel like there's enough for this pitching dominance to be sustainable for years to come in Kansas City?
I think so. When you look at what the Royals' ethos is, it's pitching, speed, and defense. They've always won that way, and they are going to try to continue to do that. So for the longest of times, the Kansas City Royals have been an organization where if they have a top guy, they will use them and allow them to grow in their organization. But then if they got too expensive, they just let them walk, right? Most small market teams pretty much do that. These Royals have the backing of ownership. They have JJ Picollo, who is a great general manager, has an eye for talent. They are locking up guys that are performing, young guys, young pitchers, and keeping them in their organization. You mentioned Cole Reagans. He's a guy that they pretty much bought out much of his arbitration and allowing him to get another big deal when he's able to do so. And he's rewarded them with great production. He was a 2-time Tommy John guy. No one really knew what he would look like and if he's going to, have any ill effects based off of that, right? But he's an all-star, ace of the staff, and when he gets right, he's one of the best up there. You're familiar with a guy, Tarik Skubal, a great left-hander. Cole Reagans is also another great left-hander in the AL Central, right? So they have him. They have, like I said, Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha. Those are the 2 veterans that are helping all the younger guys. Both of them are locked up for the next couple of years as well. And then I mentioned Ryan Berger, Steven Kolick. You mentioned Noah Cameron, Chris Bubic, all those young guys. They can learn, they can grow, they can get starts under the tutelage of Brian Sweeney, Zach Bowe, learning from Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, and the Royals can have a pipeline of just pitchers that continue to just grow and develop. That's their strength, and they want to keep it.
If you talk to Tarik Skubal, he will speak very, very highly of Cole Reagans, which tells you everything you need to know about just how good Cole Reagans is. One starter I'm curious about is Seth Lugo. He has a 4.15 ERA in 26 starts this season. What's going on there? Because he finished second in AL Cy Young voting last season, but he has not been the same this season.
Yeah, I talked to him this weekend after he started on Friday against the Tigers, and it just didn't look right? So he's been struggling, and he's not immune to that. He understands that he has to be better. What's going on with him is really just he has to get back and reset his mindset and his mentality of what he was before he suffered a right finger injury earlier this season. It kept him out for 2 starts, right? So he was struggling trying to deal with that and trying to figure out how to not, be so fine anymore. Now the injury is back healthy. So it's one thing of like relearning, just allowing the pitches to do what they're supposed to do in the strike zone. Because sometimes when we're dealing with something, we're compensating with something, we try to be too perfect. We try to be too precise because we know we can't necessarily be as sharp as we want to be. So with Lugo, now that he's healthy and he's past the finger injury, he is trying to get back to saying, hey, I have this curveball, I have this slinker, I have this slider. I can start it at different locations in the strike zone and allow it to have the right shape that it needs. And it takes time to get that back, get that confidence back of doing that after you've dealt with a finger injury, right? So now he's just trying to just get it all together, get it all back right. And the Royals are hoping that he can do it in September before the playoffs come.
So I'm pretty high on Makwachwaro as a manager. For me, it's AJ Hinch, then Kevin Cash, then Makwachwaro in terms of managers who thrive in that strategic chess match in game. What's it been like watching Q do his thing as the manager of the Royals, and what's his future in Kansas City?
They love Q in Kansas City. He's the guy, everyone in the organization, they love his calm demeanor, his approach to the game, his ability to keep things in perspective, taking it one day at a time. That today mantra that the Royals have that came from Q, and it's from the top down approach. And they've all just hitched their wagons to that, and they love what that can do for the team. One thing about Q, he's going to play everybody on the roster. If you're on the Kansas City Royals roster, you're getting in the game. And that is coming from Kevin Cash and Tampa Bay. He learned from Terry Francona with the Cleveland Guardians. That analytical approach, that's what the Royals are all about. Figuring out different matchups, different ways to take advantage of different situations, and getting guys in the best spot at the right moment. Evan, you saw this, I believe it was Saturday. The Royals went with Tyler Tolbert to pinch hit at the top of the lineup for Mike Yastrzemski, and he worked the walk, I believe, was it against one of your guys' relievers, and then Bobby Witt Jr. comes up and hits the 2-run homer. That's just Matt Cottrell understanding matchups and going with his gut, and it worked out for him. Now, sometimes you can't always do that because you're going to make some mistakes, and every manager is not immune to that. So, but for Cottrell to be where he is in just his 3rd season with the Royals, I think that they're really excited for what he's done.
All right, before we get you out of here, let's get back to the postseason talk. If the Royals were to get that last wildcard spot, as of now, as the playoff picture looks today, they would play against the Houston Astros in the wildcard round. The Royals and the Astros split the 6-game season series. So if it were to be Astros versus Royals in a best-of-3 wildcard round, is that a winnable series for the Royals, a team that has some postseason experience now?
I think so. All 3 games are going to be in Houston, if I'm correct, right? The host team hosts those 3 games. And I think that's a hero's environment. The Royals have won there. They've proven they can win there in the regular season. And they will have guys like Michael Wacha going to, I believe he'll probably be game 1 starter. Cole Reagans will also be in the mix. If Seth Lugo's back on track, they have the tools to go into a place like Houston and win. It's going to be tough. Anytime you're on the road, it's going to be tough. But this is the same team that went to Baltimore last year and took 2 games in a row against that strong Orioles squad that many were picking to be a potential World Series favorite. So I think that the Royals can do the similar things against the Astros. And it's just going to come down to offensive hitting, timely hitting, efficiency, and the pitching staff coming back together. Because when you get to that back end of that bullpen, you have Carlos Estevez, Lucas Erceg. You might have Hunter Harvey back if he's back from injury, and you have a strong nucleus back there. So I won't count the Royals out, but they have a tough road to get to the playoffs. September is going to tell a lot for sure.
All right, Jaylon, thank you for all the insight about the Kansas City Royals, and we'll see what happens as the wild card race heats up in the final month of the season. As always, thank you for joining the Days of Roar podcast.
Thanks, Evan. Glad to join, and I hope I can come back again.
Everyone, that was Jaylon Thompson, the Kansas City Royals beat writer for the Kansas City Star. We have more to discuss this week about the Tigers, but before we get to that, let's take a break. We're back. Evan Petzold, Tigers beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, and Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report. Thanks again to Jaylon Thompson for joining us this week. All right, let's jump back into some Tigers talk. The legend of Kyle Finnegan continues. More splitters, fewer fastballs, no defined role, multiple innings. It's been incredible. Chris, did you ever expect this from Kyle Finnegan when the Tigers acquired him from the Washington Nationals at the July 31st trade deadline?
Absolutely not. I thought, Kyle Finnegan's a guy who the Nationals released at the end of last year, or didn't pick up his option and then re-signed him. He's always been just kind of a mid-tier closer to me, maybe even bottom-tier closer. He was getting saved because he was on a bad team, but he's just been spectacular for the Tigers. And yeah, to your point, more splitters, I think is playing a huge role in it. It goes back to having guys just throw their best pitch more often. But I think he fits a lot of what the Tigers like to do. And just to riff on that splitter thing, again, they love guys who are theoretically platoon neutral, right? And splitters are that pitch. It's not a changeup where one side can hit it. It's not a slider or a sweeper where the other side hits it. It's a pitch that just drops, and it works against lefties and righties. And I think that's why you see a couple guys in their bullpen. Montero's another guy who's throwing the splitter now. Tommy Kahnle's changeup is basically like a splitter. I think they really like these guys who could face lefties and righties, and they're giving Finnegan more responsibility now, and he's really responding. It's impressive.
Yeah, he's fueled the Tigers bullpen in the month of August. It's a 0.00 ERA and a 1.11 FIP. So his actual results match his expected results. That's a really good sign moving forward. Guys like Will Vest, Rafael Montero, especially Troy Melton, they performed notably better than their FIP. So maybe they're due for some regression, but Kyle Finnegan is showing no signs of regression. He has completed 14 1/3 scoreless innings since the Tigers acquired him at the trade deadline. And yeah, he looks like a completely different pitcher. Like he's throwing more splitters from about 30% with the Nationals to 50% with the Tigers. He's throwing fewer fastballs from 65% with the Nationals to 43% with the Tigers. So more splitters, fewer fastballs. He's also throwing different innings. And by that, I mean, he has pitched in the 7th inning twice in 12 games since joining the Tigers. He never did that in 40 games with the Nationals. He never pitched the 7th inning with the Nationals. Not this season. He's also pitched in the 8th inning 8 times in 12 games since joining the Tigers. He only did that 6 times in 40 games with the Nationals. So this guy has proven that he can pitch in the 7th, 8th, 9th innings, meaning he has proven that he can pitch in the biggest moments of the game, not just in save situations in the 9th inning. On top of that, Kyle Finnegan is also throwing more innings in the games that he does pitch. He threw 14 1/3 innings in August, which is the most he has pitched in a single month in his 6-year MLB career. He has recorded more than 3 outs 4 times in 12 games since joining the Tigers, which is an example of the Tigers' requirement of their relievers to pitch multiple innings. But he did that just 4 times in 40 games with the Nationals. So more than 3 outs, 4 times in 12 games with the Tigers, 4 times in 40 games with the Nationals. So this Tigers bullpen has been either good or bad in August, depending on how you look at it. If you look at the ERA, they've been great. If you look at the FIP, they've been bad. But there's no denying that Kyle Finnegan was an elite reliever in August. And if it weren't for Aroldis Chapman and the Boston Red Sox, I think Finnegan would win American League Reliever of the Month for August. He's been just incredible. Another guy who's making the way back, Tommy Kahnle, the question is he back? Because Tommy Kahnle is the guy who the Tigers signed in the offseason to be one of their high leverage relievers. It was the Tommy Kahnle Will Vest show at the beginning of the season. Tommy Kahnle had a 1.35 ERA in his first 32 games. And then he had a 14.85 ERA in his next 17 games. And in his last 4 games, he has thrown 4 1/3 scoreless innings with 1 walk and 5 strikeouts. Chris Brown, is Tommy Kahnle back or not yet?
I would like to believe he's back. But the problem is, even when Kahnle was good, it was hard to figure out how it was working, right? Because it's just so many changeups and you're like, why aren't these hitters just sitting on the changeup? And they are. I think it's just the pitch does so many different things. And so it always feels like it's kind of on the precipice of blowing up, but he just needs to keep stacking these performances. And I believe he's closer to the guy we saw in the first half of the season than the guy we saw the last 2 months, where it was just, beach balls up there. So I think he's on his way back. I'm not ready to say he's 100% back yet.
Yeah, it's one thing to start pitching better, and it's another thing to regain the trust of manager AJ Hinch. Luckily for Tommy Kahnle, the Tigers are praying for someone and anyone to step up and join Kyle Finnegan and Will Vest as trusted relievers in high leverage situations. So the opportunity for Kahnle actually came pretty quickly. It happened in Saturday's 3-1 loss to the Royals. Kahnle enters in a 1-1 tie with a runner on first base and 2 outs. in the 6th inning facing Michael Garcia. And Kahnle struck out Garcia to end the 6th inning. And then he returned for a scoreless 7th. He held the game at a 1-1 tie. But then Tyler Holton gave up the 2-run home run to Bobby Witt Jr. in the 8th inning. That was a very encouraging outing for Tommy Kahnle. It's also been an encouraging 4-game stretch for him. If the Tigers want to make a deep run in the playoffs, they need more than 2 relievers who can take down the best Red Sox hitters in the final innings. Roman Anthony, Alex Bregman, Jarren Duran, Trevor Story, and the best Yankees hitters in the final innings. Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm Jr. It can't just be Kyle Finnegan and Will Vest. Otherwise, those guys are either going to be gassed or they are going to get overexposed. The Tigers need Tommy Kahnle. Question for you too. Who is the lefty specialist in the Tigers bullpen? And do the Tigers need a lefty specialist as we close out the season, getting towards October, looking ahead to the ALDS, maybe the ALCS, and maybe even if we're lucky, the World Series? Do the Tigers need a lefty specialist?
I'm sure think that they would love to have one. You know, I mentioned just a minute ago that they kind of like these guys with splitters. It goes back to Shelby Miller, right? What they hoped Shelby Miller would be, where you can get lefties and righties out. And they have some of those guys, but I think they do want that guy. And we see it that the right-handed version is Brendan Hanafy, right? The sinker slider guy that you could really tough on righties. I think Brent Herter was that guy for them against lefties. It was Sean Gunther last year. And it's really nice to have somebody like that. And I'm sure they want one, but it's tough right now because they don't really have many options. You know, Tyler Holton has kind of been a guy that they've used against everyone, but I think that he may be more relegated to a lefty-only role here in the playoffs. Because he's still doing a good job. I think the OPS against him versus lefties is like 600 compared to 800 against righties. But after that, it's tough to figure. I mentioned Gunther's done for the year. Herter's on the IL with a back injury. I don't ever trust back injuries. Maybe it's just something minor, but sometimes those things linger and they pop up out of nowhere and you never know if the guy's coming back. You mentioned Bailey Horn earlier today. They clearly like Bailey Horn. They've claimed him off waivers twice, I think. And the stuff is good. I just don't know if you could trust him to throw strikes, which is not a great thing. And then you got Summers, who's been pretty underwhelming so far. I do think you mentioned earlier, you know, they may have 2-3 lefties on the roster for these next few series. And that this could be the time where they really test Horn and Summers to see if they can rely on them at all. But I do think they want one. I just don't know if they have any options.
Last year, the Tigers had Brent Herter, Sean Gunther, and Tyler Holton, all of them as these dominant left-handed relievers against left-handed hitters. This year, you can't trust Holton because his fastball is getting destroyed. Herter is in AAA Toledo with a lower back injury. And Sean Gunther, he's out for the season after undergoing hip surgery. The other lefties on the 40-man roster, Bailey Horn, Drew Summers, and Tarik Skubal. And as we know, Tarik Skubal is headlining the starting rotation. So you have Bailey Horn and Drew Summers. Are the Tigers going to march into October with Tyler Holton, Bailey Horn, and Drew Summers? Like, that's what the bullpen might look like within the next couple of days. So maybe we'll get a taste of it, but there's no way that that's holding up in the postseason. Like Roman Anthony, lefty from the Red Sox. He will hit those lefties. Jarren Duran, lefty from the Red Sox. He will hit those lefties. Like Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm Jr., a pair of lefties from the Yankees. Like they will hit those guys. So I feel, I don't know. I think those lefties from the Red Sox, from the Yankees, like I don't see them having an issue with Drew Summers and Bailey Horn, especially if those guys aren't going to be in the strike zone, specifically to Horn. So maybe Holton will give them some trouble, but that's the only lefty. It's the only lefty. And the Tigers can't even fully trust Tyler Holton. Because again, if they were to throw Holton, and even if it is against the big boys, we could still see a scenario where there is a right-handed hitter who comes up the bench to face him. Like that's dangerous as well. So I think the return of Brent Herter could be probably the biggest X factor for the Tigers bullpen. Like he's going to start a rehab assignment soon. And the lower back injury, it's not believed to be serious. So if he can get healthy, and more importantly, if he can get back to throwing strikes, then he can really help the Tigers as that left-handed specialist that they desperately need. Do you think Brent Herter is kind of like the key to unlocking all of this?
I think he very well could be. And he's a guy that they really trusted for a long time too. And you know, it's one of those situations where his performance started really flagging and you were getting concerned. It's almost a relief to hear that he's got some back pain or something that was going on, right? He wasn't just struggling. And he could be that guy. You know, it's a funky angle. He's got that sweeper. He's got the sinker that he can get outs when you need it. He could be a huge part of that because, yeah, beyond that, I don't know who you trust. Like you said, there's just not a lot of trust there. And maybe they'll form some over the next 3 weeks, but I'm skeptical of that.
Injury updates. Parker Meadows, Alex Cobb, Jose Urquidy, Paul Sewald, Matt Vierling, just to run through the list here. Center fielder Parker Meadows, right quad strain. We could see him Friday for the series opener against the White Sox. He is ready. Right-hander Alex Cobb. It's hip inflammation, both the right and the left hips. He will restart his rehab assignment coming up this week. That will reset the 30-day clock for his rehab and that will push back the Tigers' decision point. After those 30 days, he will be required to join the Tigers, but after 30 days, that's early October. The season ends September 28th. Don't think we're ever going to see him in the big leagues. Right-hander Jose Urquidy, Tommy John elbow surgery. He received an extension for his rehab assignment, so he gets another 30 days. But the Tigers are so much more encouraged about Urquidy than Cobb. So I think we will see Urquidy in the big leagues this season. However, his command has been bad, and his performance with AAA Toledo has been bad. I know AJ Hinch mentioned Urquidy had pinpoint command when they were together with the Houston Astros, but that was like 2019. That was 6 years and 1 elbow surgery ago. I'm not sure that 2019 is the best way to evaluate Urquidy's potential with the Tigers in 2025. I think we need a real good reality check there on that one. Right-handed reliever Paul Sewald coming back from a right shoulder strain. He threw a live batting practice against hitters Monday in Lakeland, Florida. He is eligible to return from the 60-day injured list on September 10th. So we should see him right around then. Outfielder Matt Vierling, he has left oblique strain. He is not ready for a rehab assignment yet. He started a hitting progression, but he still seems like he has a little bit to go. Maybe we see him in late September. I know that's what the Tigers are hoping for with Vierling, but we'll see on that. Of these players, Parker Meadows, Alex Cobb, Jose Urquidy, Paul Sewald, Matt Vierling, is there one player, and maybe I'm going to guess that it's Parker Meadows or Paul Sewald for you, of those two, who are you more excited about? Are you interested in Jose Urquidy at all? Like, what do you think about this crop of players who are going to be coming back from injury soon, headlined by Parker Meadows, possibly on Friday, and then Paul Sewald coming up right around September 10th.
Yeah, I mean, you could cross your fingers, and all three of them could be huge for the Tigers down the stretch. I was encouraged by Parker Meadows that, oftentimes when you see these rehab assignments, they start off as a DH for a couple of games or only play half a game. He started right away in center field. He hit a triple in his first at bat. It looked good to me. He's had a fair amount of strikeouts or whatever, but just get the timing down. I think he could be huge for them down the stretch. Sewald, it could also be enormous. If he can come up and be just, an average reliever or slightly better, that just lengthens the bullpen a little bit, and it's fewer innings for the guys you're worried about. And Urquidy, he looked good in the low minors. He's throwing a lot of strikes. He's finding it harder in Toledo. That's not a huge surprise. It's command is the last thing that comes back after Tommy John surgery. I think he can come up and eat some innings and junk ball his way through the lineup once or twice, mostly once, but I'm not counting on a ton from him. I do wonder if he might be a member of the rotation next year, though, but we're not really thinking about next year yet.
We also need to mention right-handed reliever Bo Brisky is out for the 2025 season. He has been injured in AAA Toledo, but he suffered a setback in his recent bullpen session, so he will not be a candidate to help the Tigers down the stretch in 2025. And the worst news of that is Brisky has an elbow injury. Last I heard, he's going to try to continue rehabbing, so surgery isn't on the table, not yet at least. But that's a really tough loss for Bo Brisky, who I know he had a ton of walks last year and that really plagued him, but at the same time, the ERA was excellent for the Tigers down the stretch. He was a really big piece of what they did, not only down the stretch in the regular season to get to the postseason, but also in the postseason. It's a tough loss losing Bo Brisky. There was kind of always that hope in the back of all of our minds that he'd be able to get back and help the Tigers at some point, but he will not be back.
And it's just another example of kind of the perilous existence of relievers, right? You think of the relievers who were helping the team last year. Brisky's out for the year, Jason Foley out for the year, Sean Gunther out for the year. It's just tough out there to put together consistent years. So you wish him well in his recovery, but yeah, I always worry about elbows, especially when they try to rehab them. It feels like they make it halfway and then it doesn't work out, and then they have to get the surgery and they've lost 2-3 years instead of just one.
And to your point, even Tyler Holton, a guy who was just so dominant in 2023 and 2024, and compared to those two seasons, a down year in 2025. No injury for Tyler Holton, but a down year nonetheless. It can be a roller coaster ride for relievers sometimes. All right, it's time to get out of here. Thanks to Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report for co-hosting with me once again this week. Thanks to everyone out there for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Drop us a rating, comment what you think about the show, and please stick with freep.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. I would like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, sports editor Bill Bradley, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.